manufacturing ecosystem in the United States. What is happening in India today from an MSME standpoint? Technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. Hi, thank you for joining us today. I had this opportunity today to introduce to you Sudhi Bangalore. Sudhi and I go a long way back, about 10 years now. I've known Sudhi to be a very remarkable leader in the space of Industry 4.0 innovation in manufacturing. Sudhi is the ex-VP and CTO for manufacturing operations at Stanley Black& Decker. He now is the CEO and founder of Full Bore Corporation, where he's been working very closely with SMEs in North America, helping them adopt to new age technologies, helping them with productivity tools, creating new age technologies, and so on. Sudhi has also been um, a founding member and a leader for manufacturing at Wipro, prior to which he was a very senior level position at Danaher Corporation. And he's also had a very long tenure as a senior leader at Rockwell Corporation. So a lot of manufacturing experience, has seen generations worth of manufacturing, completely understands both the Indian as well as the North American ecosystem. It was a pleasure hosting him earlier today when we inaugurated our new office. It's an absolute pleasure to have him around. A thought leader, somebody who thought of Industry 4.0, maybe at a level of Industry 5.0 and dark factories as early as 2016 and 2017. Thank you so much for joining us here, Sudhi. Absolute pleasure to host you. And I'm so happy that you were in India at this time and you were available to do this with us. Thank you and welcome to Machine Maze.
Likewise, Arun, at so many levels, right? We known each other for a while, and the alignment of what, and you obviously were part of the journey while I was at SPD, you supporting not just my initiative and my team, along with you did so for the other groups of Stanley Black& Decker. So your ability to engage on new ideas and then bring them to life, which is what the whole center of Stanley Black & Decker was doing, was so important and pivotal. So I'm so glad to be here, to be with you and your team today, to now see your passion and energy to innovate and more important, to then scale those opportunities with what you're doing in Machine Maze. So it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be at the event today where you're now scaling up your organization. So excited to be here, and thank you for allowing me to be part of this important day, as I said.
Thank you so much, Sudhi.
Of course, any day.
I'm going to use this opportunity to pick your mind, mostly focus on Industry 4.0 and technologies, and the manufacturing ecosystem in the United States, right? I know that you've been involved in it for a really long time. You know that piece inside out. So the first question is, you've seen the India manufacturing. You know what is happening in India today from an MSME standpoint and how we've been delivering products, exports, and so on. Are you drawing any parallels to how manufacturing is being done in India with our SMEs vis-a-vis that's happening in the United States?
Indeed, in absolutely at so many levels, right? So the short answer is yes. There are many parallels. There's some uniqueness in both in both the U.S. manufacturing as well as India, of course. But I tell you, the opportunity and the issues are the same, right? I would say that the scale is obviously one where in the US the scale is a lot higher. But then, as I said, and the challenges, they continue to be the same. And I'm sure we'll be talking about some of the specifics as we continue this discussion.
Can you give us a sneak peek at the manufacturing ecosystem in the US?
Yeah, sure. It's not a well-known fact, at least until I got involved. By the way, most of my career in manufacturing, I would say 90%, 95% of that has been with large global companies. As you mentioned, and I started my career pretty much in Rockwell. It kind of honed my skills, and it was a fantastic tenure, both in the U.S. and I actually was in India, uh, helping the adoption of some of their cutting edge technologies at that time of Rockwell, not only in India but all of Asia Pacific. So to that end, I do know a significant part of what was happening in manufacturing about 2 decades ago. And now, fast forward, now I've been involved with SMEs for about 2 years after I left Stanley Black and Decker. So that really is the extent to my involvement with SMEs. But to the question that you're posing, the SME sector in the U.S. is huge, and this is what I was trying to get with that long preamble of my understanding with SMEs. Is I didn't know they made up 98.4% of manufacturing. Right? It is not a well known. It's a massive number, and so they pretty much they call it the backbone of American manufacturing, but unfortunately, the attention and the support that SMEs get um, in the U.S. is disproportionately insignificant. What I mean by that is the ability for them to access, let's start with resources, whether it's capital or whether it is technology and innovation, ability to drive that uh, is not there. In other words, the SME sector in the US is pretty much reliant on technology built for large corporation, which is a 1.6%. And it's, for lack of a better word, it's sort of a hand-me-down or customize yourself mode that SMEs has to deal with, right? And it has been so for so long. So it's been an eye-opener for me in the 3 years I've now been involved with SMEs, especially starting in the state of Connecticut, which is where Stanley Black and Decker was operating, and I was helping the initiative in Connecticut as part of the Governor's Council. So that's that would be my first response to your question there. So and then compare and contrast to India, and the I don't exactly know what part of what's the percentage of SMEs, but it's not as high as the US, correct, right? Correct. And obviously the scale is of a different size in India, but the opportunities, especially to streamline the capital allocation for them, the ability to actually drive efficiency in manufacturing in both continents are the same. And my passion to get involved with SMEs is primarily driven with one thing: is the productivity uh, of SMEs in the US has tabled off for the last 7 to 8 years. In fact, the productivity that SMEs saw, and manufacturing in general saw in Industry 3.0, is double that of what we are seeing in Industry 4.0, as ironic as it sounds, right? So there is a big opportunity uh, to actually address what the major reasons are for these SMEs to be able to drive better productivity and throughput, which, by the way, is a direct correlation to GDP. Improved productivity, amongst other things, it has almost a direct correlation to what your economic output is for the country. So it's a big deal. So my passion now for the last 3 years, as far as SMEs is concerned, is to really understand what's really holding them back in driving productivity. And technology is one part of it. It's not the whole story, right? So that really is where my interest has been, and my work so far has been focused to helping drive productivity, at least from a technology standpoint.
Mm. I'm sure there are multiple pieces to it, right? There's skill, there's training,
Right.
and then comes the piece of technology and technology adoption and so on.
Totally.
You've seen what we do at Machine Maze. You've understood our business model. You've seen the kind of stuff that we've built. Um, what do you think machine maze can do to play a part in this America story, in the American SME story? Um, do you see some value that we can add to the process there?
I do. I do. Especially if you, one of the things, just to bring the audience to speed at least, some of the things I see as unique as far as Machine Maze offers as capabilities is your engineering design capabilities, right? Which is the ability to bring the well proven 3D technologies, etc., the basic fundamental rigors of using engineering principles to do costing, and to then make sure that there, it goes through the process beyond costing to compliance and build out and so on. I think the way you have digitized that whole process and bringing that capability to SMEs in the US is one way I think you can really help these companies adopt technology at scale and rapidly, because you already have a platform, right? So it does a few things. When you have something that's already proven, in which case Machine Maze has proven this approach in India, that's a big plus, because as we've discussed in the past, being able to show something to to manufacturers is the first way to win their confidence. If it's just talk, it's really hard, and intention, it's hard to get action from anybody in manufacturing, be it SMEs or non-SMEs. So I think the fact that you have now brought new approaches to how you actually understand what needs to be built, and then to use traditional but proven principles, digital principles, to then build the design and then take it through the process. Not every SME has the capabilities, especially in certain unique segments, right? So I think for you to now start there and bring that capability from part to print and then to produce, I think will be a great first step.
Interesting. I think that's something that we have to chalk out our pathway for. And it's great to hear that from an industry stalwart, right? And that's validation for what we're doing. I want to shift gears a little bit. Uh, Technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. With you're now talking Industry 5.0, and I fundamentally believe we have not even reaped the benefits completely for an Industry 4.0.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Right.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
the evolution has been really fast.
Yeah.
And we know that quicker the evolution is happening, SMEs are kind of like dropping back in terms of how much they adopt from the market. And we also know with the need to make where you sell, there's going to be this need for dark factories and need to automate stuff and so on. And a lot of changes are going to happen in the ecosystem. In your view, what does the future of manufacturing look like? Multiple pieces to it, but I'm sure it'll all fall into place somewhere. But having been exposed to this for so long, what do you think is the future for manufacturing, and where are we all headed as far as that's concerned?
Good question, but I think it'll be important to narrow that question to a region, right? For example, what I see in manufacturing, at least from my vantage point and my experience in the US, is one dimension to the story. Now, to pose the same question uh, to the Indian market, right? What I see in manufacturing is slightly different because of just the maturity and the scale topic, right?
So why don't you tell us about the US, and then we'll probably
Okay.
come down.
So in the US, I'll tell you, one of the things that really needs to happen is the ability to address two or three of the most immediate critical problems we have in the US. The first one is labor, right? It's a well-traveled story that we have about 2.1 million jobs in manufacturing that has not been addressed. It's such a gap that we have, that we just don't have the talent to actually fill those positions. And there are several reasons for it, right? And then not only that, again, a well-traveled story, the people in the industry today in the US are, the rate of retirement is exponential. So there's a lot of people retiring. So it's a double whammy, if you will. On one hand, we can't fill the jobs we have in the US. On the other hand, there is this massive drain of talent and skill and also passion for manufacturing that's leaving the industry. So it is the most critical problem right now is how do you address this talent deficit, right? So there are several ways that companies are trying to, or not companies, even organizations, state and federal organizations are trying to address it. Some effective, some not, like in any domain. So that is the big gap that we have in the industry. So the ability to somehow address how to keep the knowledge in-house is critical. And then by the same token, how do you now bring new talent, make it more exciting for younger generation to get in? Again, it's a well-traveled story, and I've been involved, like has been so many other individuals and organizations working on these two problems. So once you address that, the next challenge obviously is sort of the turbulence that's happening now with tariffs and so on. So I would like to park that for the side because I like so many others believe that in the next 6 months it'll stabilize to a certain extent, right? And then the third dimension is now to really address how you can drive productivity, which is the most critical thing in SMEs. Going back to the point I made, it is less than half of what it was in 4.0. So how do you now bring the power of Industry 4.0? Now it's in some countries it's 5.0. Is how do you now bring the power of the new genre of Industry 4.0? I see it as 4.0 point 1 and 4.0 point 2, that we are in point 2. In the last, in my opinion, 1 year, it's been a exponential change in the way you can deploy technology in factories.
Correct.
And we all know what those are, right?
Correct, yeah.
So the ability to use some of these technologies to drive automation and augmentation of agentic AI, which addresses point number 1, which is not enough talent coming in, should be the most important thing. Okay, and I think there's several, not I think, I believe there's several components that need to come together to make this possible for not just one or two companies, but it needs to be in the hundreds and thousands of companies that needs to adopt that, right? So that to me is step 1 that needs to happen. Because now it does two things. Not only are you addressing the critical deficit of labor, but you're also now bringing the best of 4.0, if you will,
Correct.
of technology, which is what this agentic AI represents, whether it's IoT or agentic AI, it's a culmination of all of those things. So now when you bring this technology that's under that heading and addressing this labor challenge, that'll be a game changer, because now that you have demonstrated value, then you will have the SME industry a lot more open to adopting more technology. And then one thing leads to another because your productivity is going up. So there's a lot more volume that gets created. I'm hoping that's going to be the flywheel effect, if you will, that gets created. To the point you made last, which is I believe this lights out factory or dark factory, however you want to call it, it's not a monolithic the way it's been described. I think it can be discrete. There are parts, pieces of the operations can be lights out. And that's what will fit the SME structure. And when you do that, then suddenly there's going to be incredible power of scale and productivity, and also an energy that's going to bring the Gen X into this fold.
And I
You
think that's
need
a
that.
piece that's been missing, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. So it's also this excitement and, for lack of a better word, make manufacturing, a little more
again.
fun and sexy, right?
Yeah.
We need that, right? It's just human nature. And we're seeing that in India. We were talking when we were having coffee, right? You have the Zomatos and these massive global apps in India that's completely changing the way people are looking for work, the younger generation.
Correct, yeah.
So we need something like that in manufacturing, both in the US as well as in India. So at least long-winded answer to your first question, this is what I see as sort of 3 steps, if you will, of evolution in the US.
That's a very deep level of understanding, right? And that's why I want to pursue this. How do you how does this work from an India perspective? Like, you just outlined what can be done for the US market.
Right.
India's problems are slightly different,
Yes.
smaller in terms of overall size of SMEs, though we have many. And we spoke about turnovers and so on, right? There seems to be a huge gap. Um, how does this work for an Indian market, according to you?
In Indian market, I think you don't have the labor issue as much, which is a good thing, right? Because now you can focus on the main course, if you will, is how do you make these SMEs a lot more same as in the US, believe technology can really address some of the problems, right? So I believe maybe not to the extent in the US. You have to be a little more frugal in terms of innovation, in terms of how you bring um, the agentic AI, for lack of a better word, using that as a moniker, to help Indian SMEs. And I was thinking one way you could use that is instead of automating some of the processes, maybe the way to use technology here is to address expertise that you need in manufacturing, right? Whether when you have a scheduling problem, when you have a material issue, etc., how do you quickly get expertise to help you? And using AI to that extent could be one way to energize the SME market in India. Also, making the giving the ability to improve productivity is the same as in the US, right? Especially in operations that have assembly, the opportunity to improve productivity is higher. But when it comes to machining, then the problem becomes one of investment, because now you have to really invest in hard assets. And that is where I think the stories become similar, is instead of treating dark, factories or lights out factories as the answer, you need to kind of chunk it down, if you will. And this is where I think funding from the government and also the multinationals who participate in Indian manufacturing, taking it back to the US or European regions, becomes really critical. Capital is hard to get both the regions, but in the US, I believe it's going to be a lot more manageable compared to India, right? So I think that is a bigger problem in India, is changing the mindset of the entrepreneurs. Sometimes here the scale is even smaller, not sometimes. Most times the scale is a lot smaller in India, right? We're talking of, when I was at IIT Madras, thanks to you, talking to the folks there, they were saying you have 3-man operations or 4-man operations, in India. You don't have that in the States. At least I haven't seen that, right? So for those kinds of operations, you'd really need help from an investment standpoint, and also to convince and bring credibility to some of the things that technology can really enable, whether it is to improve quality or whether it's to improve productivity or whatever the case may be, right? Or in plain terms, sometimes if it's a 3-man or a 4-man shop, how do you keep the business alive?
Correct. I think bringing in demand is one of the major challenges here, right?
Totally.
I think that's
100%.
I
Yeah.
think that's also true to the market in the US, but it's a lot more evolved. Uh, and
Totally.
and I was flabbergasted by the size of SMEs there versus in
It's
India,
much
right?
higher.
Much higher.
Yeah. And it's kind of stark and interesting for me. I felt the same way, right? I never thought I would say the size of SMEs in the US is significant enough, because until I saw the Indian market in the last few months and years, I didn't realize the Indian SMEs were so small.
Yeah.
So now I realize that, oh man, it can be smaller than the size that you see in the US. So
Correct.
it's a lot. Just for the audience, listening to this podcast, to imagine a SME, the average, what is the low end of SME size here?
We would do micro small. So micro would be around 5 crores ish. It could start from 50 lakhs, but 5 crores
Less than a
is
million.
less than $1 million. Small would again, investment would be 20 crores, sub 20 crores in capital equipment, and then subsequently. But nothing the size of what you mentioned. What you mentioned is size of some of the
I
OEMs.
know, right? So
You
when
mentioned
you're
it.
touching
Uh,
3 to 4 million, is this much
and,
higher?
and that's big here. That's very big.
Wow.
Um,
So that puts in context the issue with investment, like you said. how do you invest in some of these newer technologies when your base is so small, meaning the ability to raise capital, etc., right? Because your revenue is so small.
Correct.
So that's where it really needs to, a lot of things need to come together to enable funding or the ability for technology to bring the cost down. But I don't think where, even with some of the amazing innovation that has happened in China as far as dark factories go, I don't think even they can help India bring it down to that cost point, in my opinion. Right?
And I think, Sudhi, this is where aggregation works as a concept
Totally.
because you have multiple small SMEs. Reach is a challenge. Ability to fulfill engineering requirements, ability to invest in engineering tools, these things are a challenge, right? I think that's where aggregation kind of very snugly fits in to the
Totally.
entire jigsaw puzzle.
Totally. And I think you're addressing the tip of the spear there, right?
Correct.
All of the engineering tools that helps you design and build and follow through and track. That's what you're building.
Correct.
But when it comes to the actual assets themselves, maybe a similar story could apply there. Is what if you were to have a manufacturing as a service farm, right? Where you actually buy capacity from some of these assets and then you build it there. So you still are an SME, but then you're buying capacity in a larger lights out kind of setup, like a like complex, if you will, right? So maybe that day is not too far because it's already happening.
Correct. That's way to also kind of aggregate capacity in a single place.
Absolutely.
And that's
The
really
same
the way to
concept.
go, right?
Yeah.
I don't think breaking into multiple smaller chunk is always beneficial. You might want to be able to increase the size, revenue size of SMEs, and that's probably the first goal
True.
to work on.
And it doesn't matter which area of the world you're talking about. Being able to attract younger generation has always been an issue in manufacturing, right? So I think now to bring a concept of a lights out manufacturing as a service, for lack of a better term, could be pretty cool. It is like now everybody would want to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody, but a lot higher of a number would show interest in manufacturing, meaning the younger generation, the second and third generation. So I think that's probably the way to go.
Um, America has kind of adopted to additive manufacturing, and this is something that I often think about, right? So there's additive manufacturing coming in, there's new age polymers coming in. Fundamental manufacturing is changing, right? Everything that we have built from a process point of view that is mass adopted in the market today is subtractive machining and manufacturing, right? Your views on how new age manufacturing, such as additive, um, will drive the industry forward? A few pointers on that.
From my perspective, I tell you what, additive manufacturing, despite the enormous hype, think about it, additive manufacturing almost blasted into prominence sometime around 2019. It's 6 years, right? And if you look at the adoption of additive, barring some sectors like defense and aerospace, which is where the best fit is for the technology, and maybe some in medical sciences, it has been lackluster, right? If you go to industrial manufacturing, the best use case, the most traveled use case of additive is to use it to build fixtures
And prototypes.
and prototypes, right? So it's kind of, in my opinion, underwhelming, this whole topic of additive manufacturing, the amount of grants that went into additive manufacturing, etc. So has it made a dent in the market? Yeah, very pointy in certain industries. But then to say that it is going to change the trajectory of manufacturing, I think is kind of taking it too far, right? So that's my at least view of where additive is. It's almost on the waning side of the momentum, if you will. I don't see and I don't hear as much. And you can actually, and I've been part of some of the discussions with large automotive like Ford, etc. Ford was one of the biggest investors of additive. Um, uh, don't want to get into all the details of what they did because it's a well-traveled story again, but they spent a lot of energy and thought leadership and investment to build some incredible capability. I would say maybe about 20 to 25% of that has paid off. In fact, some of their investments in Vision.ai and other quality related initiatives have been far, far higher, than additive.
So that kind of incrementally improving the current value chain that we have rather than creating something that's totally
That's
new.
right.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
it goes back to the big thing here, which is about how do you improve productivity? Because, as I said, it's a massive opportunity. Productivity has not only stabilized, but it has waned downwards. So I think there is at least in the US maybe 8 to 10% productivity over the next four years or so. That's easily available because it stalled for so long. And in India, it's a lot higher, right? So if you focus on that, and then in addition to solving some of the other infrastructural problems, then to your point, that's what's going to create demand,
Correct.
right? Because and some energy, demand and energy with the younger generation is critically important, and awareness also about the people awareness of what manufacturing uh, is especially needed in India, right? Uh, because people don't have a good feel for manufacturing, especially the way IT and related technologies have just absolutely engulfed the whole country, and rightly so. It's incredibly big. It's an incredible impact on the life of Indians as well as people all over the globe. So it's kind of dwarfed everything else, right? So now I think it's time for manufacturing, given all of the things that's happening for every country, and especially in India, to bring some awareness to the common people, saying, what is manufacturing and why is it powerful? Why is it so prideful, if that's a word, right? I think that's needed. It shouldn't be forgotten.
True. And you come from a very traditional manufacturing background, right? Your entire family. So I think you've seen this through three decades. Yeah, for lack of a better word,
That's
right?
right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm sure you're able to draw parallels
Yeah.
as you tend to experience this. Um, Finally, your message to Machine Maze. You met with the team. You met with You've seen what we're trying to do here.
My message, I tell you, it's as I've said a couple of times through the morning, it's really uh, energizing, and it's so heartening to see uh, the whole concept of aggregating manufacturing, and and the way this company was founded after COVID, and how fast it's come, and how far it has come in just a short period of 3.5 years. Uh, it's pretty amazing, to say the least. And so the message, as I was saying this morning, is, hey, you're on an awesome growth trajectory. The timing couldn't be perfect. Yeah, it's a little rocky right now. That's what makes it interesting.
Correct.
You can't have only the best of times, and it has been so for the last 2 years.
Correct.
So I think it's going to toughen you guys up. It's going to drive more innovation from you, right? And I love as an example, the innovation where you're now offering assembly services. I think it's much needed, especially if you're now exporting to outside regions
Correct.
of the world, which you are. So you need to continue doing it. It's not just about growth, satisfying demand with the same quality and passion that you do, but it's also about, hey, how do you now create some breakthrough innovations, right? That makes this whole model even more exciting. And then finally, my uh, messages keep chugging along like the way you are, for lack of a better sophisticated term, right?
Yeah.
But I think there is a larger purpose for the industry in general, right? Manufacturing. It's about pride, and so what you're doing now, along with working with OEMs, etc. If we can actually create solutions that truly are at the right cost point for SMEs that could never afford it, that'll be an incredible goal to have. And I have posed this to large companies when I was at SPD. In fact, ServiceNow I was in one of their major keynote speeches, and the CEO wanted me to say a few words. And that was the challenge I gave them. They're saying, hey, how can you create the same kind of expertise and value that you do for large enterprise customers to the SME market, right? So they want a challenge every time after they have a fantastic quarterly end. They bring someone from the outside and they challenge the whole team, the whole company with the CEO there. And that's the opportunity I had with ServiceNow. And that's the challenge I posed to them, right? So I posed the same thing to you guys is and you obviously are in growth mode, you need to stabilize. That could be a nice, goal to have on the side, if you will, to saying, hey, let's keep looking out for things that we can truly help our local SMEs. And we know their challenges most dearly. You work with them inside out. There's no other place, where you can find a solid understanding of SMEs as you would with your own team. So that would be my message,
Thank you. I think this was a pleasure hosting you today.
Likewise.
Sudeep.
Yeah.
We look forward to chatting up more about best industry practices, the SME ecosystem, general manufacturing, right? Always a pleasure to have you around.
Thank
For
you.
being with
Thank
us
you.
today.
And
Thank you so much.
the pleasure was mine. And thank you for inviting me on such an important day.
Thank you so much, Sudeep.
Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.